Welcome to another edition of Pro Lacrosse Talk presented by Fanatics. Reminder to visit prolacrossetalk.com/NLL shop or prolacrossetalk.com/NLL shop-CA for our Canadian fans for your official NLL team gear. I'm your host, Hutton Jackson. Today, I'm joined by PLT contributor Sam Long. Sam, thank you for joining me today. What did you think of this PLL news that we're going to start off with?
I mean, since they started, that was something me and my buddies always talked about of like, I wish that there was more of a player aspect to like where they wanted to play. Especially because like if you were a player in the league and you didn't want to be on your team, your only options were basically be cut or be traded. At least now, you can kind of let your contract expire and then go maybe sign with the team you actually want to play for. So I think it'll be really good for the sport and really good for, I think, creating a little more interest in the offseason. I think that's one thing that PLL they try to do a good job with, but free agency really, I think, will boost their offseason engagement.
No, I agree. And we'll have to wait till 2023, unfortunately, for free agency, but it is coming. They're going to have a restructuring period coming up. But some other news accompanying this is that the coaches that act as the GMs on their teams are now going to have a certain salary allotment for their players. They're going to have a cap of $735,000 that they're going to have to allocate, and they're going to have to allocate at least 98% of that. So that's essentially the cap. And then the floor is $720,300. So nice to see that there's kind of now a salary cap and floor. That's going to, definitely maintain parity in the league. I think the parity in the league's been pretty good so far. But that's going to kind of, reinforce that, where teams aren't going to just be able to be stacked. These coaches are going to have a little bit more decisions to make based on salaries and stuff. And the fact that they're going to be the one restructuring it, creates a little bit more of an interesting dynamic. January 18th to 23rd, there'll be the off-season roster movement window, which will allow coaches to trade and release players prior to the start of the player signing window, which starts on January 24th and goes until April 1st. So that signing window will allow coaches then to allocate their compensation for their full 25-man roster. So should see some interesting moves. Even though there isn't going to be a free agency period, you might see some players released and then picked up by other teams based on, salary constraints. So that's going to be something that's interesting. And you might see some trades also made. We got a little bit more details on the number figures, especially in terms of college draft picks. The top 4 picks will receive, in this order, $30,000, $28,500, $27,000, and then $26,000 as their base salary to start. And then every draft pick after that will have a base salary of $25,000, which no other player will make less than $25,000. That's going to be the bare minimum salary, which is, leaps and bounds above what it was at the MLL. So again, PLL pushing forward to make sure this is a professional league. Those aren't professional, type numbers that we have come to know in other sports teams, which, is something as lacrosse fans we're gonna have to get used to a little bit. It wasn't public information, but a lot of people knew that these players weren't paid well. Now that we kind of have dollar figures associated to it, hopefully those figures will start to go up, but that's the reality of where our sport currently is right now. But any other thoughts on this news? And do you have any players that, even though there's no free agency period this year, that you're kind of hoping to see in free agency, or maybe see, released from their teams and go to another team this offseason?
Yeah, I'm, as a diehard Archers fan, I'm really excited for, obviously I was really excited when they picked up Graham Hossack because he's an absolute monster. What I'd like to see, and this is going to be an issue, is like face-off guys mainly, because that's, I think, the Archers' biggest issue. But there's not that many like really good face-off guys. You've got like Joe Nardella, who consistently is like really good. TD Ireland this past year was really good. We'll see if he can continue that success in year 2. And then Trevor Baptiste, really good. Outside of those 3, kind of the rest of the guys are like, they'll get you around 50%, but like those are the top 3. So I think it'll be really interesting how the face-off position shapes out most of all. I honestly don't want it to become like in the NFL where there's like a kicker, just carousel, but I think you could see that where, you've got a guy that's, he's not getting the job done, and there's a free agent that can, you think, do at least as good and maybe better. So you just drop and sign the next one. So that's the thing I'm kind of the most interested to see, is how kind of these specialist positions shake out with free agency.
No, I think that's a good point. And the 3 teams you mentioned, obviously have solid face-off guys. TD was worth his weight in gold as that top draft pick for the Redwoods. Max Adler kind of came into his own as well. So I think, those 4 teams, Chaos, Redwoods, Atlas, and Whipsnakes are pretty set. But the other 4, I think, you might see a carousel. You kind of saw it a little bit already with the Cannons, picking up some guys in the expansion draft. And then, didn't really work out, didn't pan out. So I think they're going to kind of look to the draft. I think you saw, like you said, the Archers really, it hurt them, and I'm sure they were in on probably some other face-off guys, maybe like Gallagher or whatever early on, and, didn't really follow them. And Gaffney, showed a little bit of glimmers, when he was able to play. But yeah, that's definitely going to be an interesting thing going forward. I agree 100% with that. And what does the Chrome do with Connor Farrell? He had a down year, but he's obviously shown that he can still perform in this league. So, does another team take a chance on him? A lot to kind of figure out. And again, I'm more excited, less for the contract values, but knowing the years. I think, we did get to see some players re-sign with the league and they announced like how many years they were, but now I think that's going to be more public and that's going to be interesting. Someone's in a contract year. What are they going to do next season? I think that's going to be what I'm looking forward to most going forward, now that there is kind of going to be free agency, and free agency is going to be great and kind of necessary now that expansion's kind of slowed down a little bit. So doesn't sound like they're going to add any more expansion teams. I think that's a good, thing to do right now, is just kind of wait a little bit. I think 8 teams is pretty set. I would love to see more teams definitely in the future. Don't get me wrong there, but I think, wait maybe a year or two before you add some more teams. I think the parity in the league's good where it's at right now. So adding that free agency period is definitely going to help with the parity of the league, because expansion kind of filled that void for a time being, in the first couple of years of the league. Now, if you're not going to have expansion drafts, teams are going to stay relatively the same. And how do you kind of, break up the whip snakes, or, kind of allow some bottom teams to kind of be competitive? That's the way you do it. That in the draft, of course. But yeah, I think this is great news for the sport going forward. Kind of puts it, back on the same level as the NLL, which has a free agency period, operates a lot like a professional league. We don't know the dollar figures necessarily for the NLL. A lot of it's, unsaid. But I think this is a good move for professional field lacrosse.